I was recently talking to a fellow writer friend about the state of books today, when we ended up complaining about something I would never have expected: strong female characters. Here were two female writers and avid readers complaining about the deplorable state of so many female characters written today. And the wild thing is that we quickly branched out from books to movies and media as a whole. And believe me, when women are complaining about the representation of women going, quote unquote, too far, you know something has gone horribly wrong. So what has happened to the stories we're told on mainstream media and in books and in movies today? Well, that's exactly what a couple of friends of mine are about to help me unravel as we dive into how to create strong female characters who aren't annoying. Hey friend, do you love the smell of books? Maybe you absolutely delight in the sound of a pen gliding across a page as you write. Hi, my name is Shira Rodriguez, and I am a Jesus follower, a writer, entrepreneur, and lover of all things boho and books. In this podcast, I want to take you on a journey of discovering yourself, discovering God and your passions, and how to make your life beautiful and so full that it overflows into the lives of others. And over here, we are not about compartmentalizing life. Oh no. Over here, we talk about holistically taking your life and presenting it as a place where others can be blessed just by knowing you. Are you excited? I am. So snag your favorite mug of tea or a pen and paper and let's jump in. Because you're listening to Her Reading Life podcast. Hey listeners, welcome to another episode of Her Reading Life podcast. I am so delighted to have you here. If this is your first time, welcome. My name is Shira Rodriguez, and I'm a novelist and podcaster with a passion for words, wonder, and whimsy. And I hope that you will come in here feeling both welcome and inspired. Just feel like I am sitting across from you at a coffee shop and we have a mug of tea or a hot coffee and we're just sipping it, talking like old friends, and just enjoying in the company of other writers and just enjoying some really wonderful writerly goodness. Friends, today I am so thrilled for today's episode because this is actually the first time that I am inviting some male writers onto the podcast. I've been working on this episode for several months now, actually, and I am so thrilled to be able to finally release this to you. I know that I have actually teased this a little bit on Instagram, and some of the guys that were invited were also teasing this on their own stories, so I am so absolutely excited. I know I've said this way too much, but I really am super excited to be able to release this and be able to share some of the incredible insights that these male writers shared with me, particularly on, well, for today's episode, particularly on writing strong female characters and kind of a guy's perspective on, you know, how that's actually working and why it's actually not working that well in a lot of stories from the mainstream media and in films and books. It's truly intriguing. They taught me so much. I had no idea why exactly. I could give a basic reason as to why it didn't work, but these guys went so much further than I ever could, and I learned so much and had so much fun at the same time. But a little bit of backstory on how things were actually going behind the scenes. Late last year, so around November, I started sending out my novel to beta readers, and it was so exciting to be able to see the first 6 chapters of my novel and see reactions of some of my lovely writer friends to the actual novel and seeing how much they actually loved the characters and things like that. And it was really interesting to see because so far my dad and my sister had been the only ones to actually read the novel. And so it was so exciting to get their feedback. But something that I was really wondering as I looked over their feedback was, oh, okay, I got some very distinct things from female writers that I hadn't gotten from my dad, for example, or very distinct things that I would get from my sister and some of the other female writers that I would wonder, I'm like, oh, is this a guy thing or is it that I'm actually missing? Are they able to see something in my manuscript that I can't see because my brain just works differently. And it's pretty obvious, like men and women have a very different psychology kind of thing. Like the brains are just completely wired differently. And so that really got me thinking about actually creating a podcast episode that talked about how to write strong male characters, but asking guy writers how to write it because they know their brains. I don't. And so I told my sister this idea. I told her, I was like, oh my goodness, I would love to create a podcast episode on this because I know that if I were to listen to a podcast, be subscribed to a podcast and see that they released this episode, I would instantly click on that just out of curiosity because I truly would love to know how to create a strong male character from a male writer's perspective. And so that idea slowly evolved, and I finally was actually able to contact 3 incredible guy writers. I reached out to them, and I'll be honest, I was terrified. I had no idea what they were going to say. I was terrified they would say no, but I waited. And they surprised me by being so gracious and actually accepting the invitation to come onto the podcast. And so now I am so excited to be able to share this episode with you. Although initially we were going to just talk about strong male characters, this quickly branched out into talking about the strong female character and why it works, why it doesn't work. Or how to make it work. That's more accurate. How to make it work and why it doesn't work in some instances, as well as, the strong male character, how to construct a strong male character. And we even branched out into how to create relationships between male and female characters, both platonic and romantic, that actually work and create that chemistry that we love and long for in books. So I am so excited to let you listen to this episode. But before then, let me introduce you to the guys who are actually going to be just leading us through all these topics. The first up is B.W. Luby. You'll actually hear us call him Byron because BW is going to be really awkward. As soon as he graduated from a rigorous homeschool education, Byron founded Foxling Studios, an independent publishing house for his books and music. When he's not writing books, Byron is usually composing music for them and dreaming of the day when he will be able to publish the work of other authors. Next up, we have Christopher Babcock, whose adventures have taken him from the Thar Desert of India to the rainforest slopes of Malawi. He loves sci-fi and fantasy, especially books that deal truthfully with difficult topics. And he was recently also featured on the Lawless Anthology, which is basically a retelling of the Book of Judges in a kind of steampunk, deserty western vibe. Last but not least, we also have Jaden Gelso, who is an aspiring author, screenwriter, and filmmaker. His love of storytelling first stemmed from an obsession with the Star Wars franchise, the Lord of the Rings series, and all 8 Harry Potter films. Outside of writing, you may be able to spot him making a film, watching The Office, laughing at inside jokes, or posting about his current work in progress on Instagram. I am so excited to let you listen to this episode, and I can't wait to hear your thoughts on this same topic. So, with no further ado, let's jump in. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Her Reading Life podcast. I am so delighted to have you guys here with me today because one of the episodes that I've been the most excited about. Actually, I've been planning this for a really, really long time, and I'm so excited to share this episode with you guys because today I have in the studio 3 amazing writers who are actually going to talk about a topic that I've been so curious about for so long. As some of you know, I have all sisters, so I was always curious what it was like for guys, like a guy perspective on reading and writing and creating characters, but I honestly didn't know who to ask. So I was so delighted when these 3 male writers decided to accept my invitation to come on the podcast and talk a little bit about this. Thank you guys so much. Welcome onto the podcast.
Thanks. Happy to be here.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Thank you so much.
So, guys, I would love to hear what's your story? What inspired you guys to start writing in the first place? Because we all know we don't do this because we necessarily dream of being bestsellers or something like that. We do this because we love writing. I'd love to hear what inspired you guys to start writing. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, Christopher, first.
Yeah, sure. I think for me, it was really when I read Narnia as a kid. I was probably around 9 when my mom first started reading the books to us, and then I would listen to the audiobooks on repeat. And something about the world just captured my imagination in a way that nothing else had at that point. And I just remember being like, I want to do that. I want to do that thing where you write a book and people connect with it on this deep level and it speaks truth into their life. Because also for me, it helped me understand the gospel and like God's love for us. And I think also I just loved the C.S. Lewis sort of mystique. My sister teases me that, you know, I'm trying to manifest my old British man, which I think is oddly accurate. So there's also that.
I love that. Thank you. I'd love to hear what inspired you to start writing, Jaden.
Yeah, so when I was about 7 or 8 years old, I was visiting some friends in Colorado, and I'd always loved watching movies. And one of the movies that we watched with those friends was a movie called Hugo, and it's about a sort of like depressed filmmaker. He was a real filmmaker, George Méliès, and he and I realized while watching that, oh man, like I love movies, I love stories, people actually make them. I'd never really considered that when I would watch or read movies and or books. And so when I went home, I teamed up with my brother and a friend of ours, and we started making short films. Eventually, that translated into me taking a screenwriting class at our local library. The writing journey started with screenwriting. Then eventually that sort of turned into narrative writing, like short stories, novellas, which nobody will ever see. But they were a starting point until eventually I worked up to writing my first novel, which is the one that I have published.
That's amazing. I love that. Yeah, and I love that movie too. It's really wonderful. And honestly, it's so cool how both of you guys like there's different paths that you guys took to writing, but it all kind of led to that passion that you guys have and how far that you guys have been able to come. Yeah, I'd love to hear, Byron, what's your story and what inspired you to start writing?
Yeah, so for me, I'd always been a bookworm most of my life. My mom got me hooked on Harry Potter when I was 7, and I read The Sorcerer's Stone within the week. And so ever since then, just devouring book after book, they couldn't buy me enough. I never really started considering writing my own stories until I was 14. And really, that came from more of a place, in all honesty, of being frustrated with the current books on the shelves at stores, just finding stuff that didn't have all this debauchery in it. And so I just wanted to write stories that I wanted to read that nobody else would write. And, just a deeper level to that is I wanted to be able to, for my little brothers and sisters to be able to not have to worry as much as I did in trying to find good books. And I just wanted to be able to tell them stories. So that's how my current series kind of evolved and developed from.
I love that. And yeah, it's actually, I love how you said that she got you hooked on books like it was some kind of a drug.
Yeah. Yeah. First one was free, had to buy the rest.
Exactly. Yeah. I love that. And I love how each one of you, like, you all were inspired in some way, shape, or form by something that you wanted to see in the world. Because I think essentially, like, at the heart of what we do, we create what we want to see in the world. Because even if there's something similar, like, for example, with Lord of the Rings or movies like Hugo or Harry Potter, we were inspired by something and we wanted more. And we found that we didn't have quite as much as we wanted. And we just decided to create what we wanted. And I just love that. I love that creativity can just bless not just yourself, because we enjoy writing. I mean, it's painful. I'm not gonna lie, it's painful sometimes, but but it's also so enjoyable, and yet it blesses other people too when you get to share your work and when they get to read it. So I would love to know, and we'll start with you, Byron. What is your number one favorite book and your current read?
Well, the current read's a little easier question. I'm reading The Librarian of Auschwitz, and I'm listening to The Picture of Dorian Gray. As far as favorite books go, it's a toss-up between three because I'm like that. And it's The Lord of the Rings, the Mistborn trilogy, and then of course Harry Potter. They're all so different from each other. I can't pick one of the other. Uh, I just love them all for so many different reasons.
I love that. Yeah. Oh my goodness. Wow, you are reading some tough books right now.
I am. Yeah, I like having my heart ripped out. Whether or not it's put back together at the end is, I'll leave my fate in the hands of the author.
I love that. Yeah. Just asking. So I know a lot of girls are always like, "Oh my goodness, I cried so hard." Do you guys actually like cry over books? Because I
No.
can't. I
No.
can't. Like I'll be depressed all day, but I can't
Oh,
cry.
depressed all day, absolutely.
Okay.
Bawling over it, no.
Yeah, no. There's no tears, but there's the side effect of making it your entire personality for a week, or
Yeah.
just kind of like treating everyone like crap because you're so depressed.
No. Oh no.
Yeah,
Okay.
I had read this one moment in Mistborn when my brothers and I and my dad were going out to hike at these local mountains, and I read like it was a character death scene, and I was just out of it the rest of the day, just completely traumatized, stuck in that world. Like, what did I just in denial that this guy actually died? It was awful. No tears were shed, but he was mourned.
Oh my word, that's hilarious. Oh dear, beware these guys if they have read some tough books.
That's kind of how I felt after reading the Iliad when Patroclus dies. And then Achilles' reaction to that was heart-wrenching, very, very sad. And then I read it for class too. So I mean, we discussed in class, which made it even worse. But
Oh no.
but it was definitely a scene where it seemed to be mourned.
Yeah, honestly, I love the fact that you can appreciate emotional like books, and there's a lot of ways to mourn characters more than just crying over them, because I sincerely I can't, for some reason I can't cry over books. Listeners, I also wanted to let you guys know that that my sister is also here with us. You guys have already heard her on a previous episode where we did the first lines game, where we were reading first lines of different novels and guessing them. So you guys already know her. You already love her. And yeah, just wanted to let you guys know that she's also here. Thank you so much for coming on. Thank you so much for coming on, Nev.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. So, oh my goodness, I would love to hear what is your number one favorite book and your current read, Jaden, and tell us if it is getting you moody as well.
Well, okay, so I'm actually, my number one favorite book at the moment, it changes depending on my mood, but at the moment it's Dune by Frank Herbert, and I am only about 150 pages in. I haven't finished the book, and it's already becoming a favorite right now. It's also my current read. But on another note, another current read, which I'm reading for school right now, is Dante's Inferno, which is absolutely incredible so far.
It's phenomenal.
It's absolutely amazing. We're going to be going through Purgatorio, not Paradiso until next semester, I don't think, but Inferno is absolutely amazing, especially with all the deep sort of philosophical themes that are part of it, and all of the imagery that Dante is able to capture within the poem. It's amazing. But going back to Dune, that is my current Dune is my current personality. So so yeah, but especially with the world building and again philosophical themes and sort of like the anti-Lord of the Rings in a sense, in terms of how it's presented, like both equally great but very opposite, which I find really, really interesting.
Right. I love that. Oh, that's amazing. Yeah, it's really funny how you change, your mood changes and people are like, what happened? And I'm like, it's a book. They're like, it's just a book. I'm like, it is a book. You don't understand.
I've been reciting lines from the books, and some of my friends are like, "What are you?" And like,
No.
and I'll just yell, "I am Paul Muad'Dib Atreides," and
Oh no.
they'll just laugh at me. And I'm like, "Oh man, I'm such a nerd."
Lisan al-Gaib.
Lisa Al Gaib, exactly.
Oh man.
Oh, I love it. Yeah, I memorized like the first lines of Milton just because they were so beautiful. But but I don't know if I can actually recall all of them. But yeah, I have to read the Inferno because I don't know why I didn't do world literature. I didn't get to. I think I would spend so much time with all the other books and I spent a lot of time in American and British literature that I didn't get to read it. But man, I always get a whole bunch of book lists from you guys.
Yep, it's a Hydra.
This is true.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Chris, I'd love to hear what is your number one favorite book and current read? And I just want to let you know, I think that you may have a shared current read with Byron.
Mm. So,
Or not current read, sorry, favorite read.
oh yeah, I'm gonna be basic and say that my favorite is Lord of the Rings, which I'm sure
Base.
has never been said on this podcast before. But yeah, after Narnia, it was really the series that influenced me the most. So I guess Narnia kind of hit me in my preteens, and then Lord of the Rings was, I guess, the next step in terms of how I thought and how I was kind of growing into adulthood. So that was really cool, and I think taught me a lot about kind of masculinity and what that looks like through characters like Aragorn and Faramir. And my current read is a book called Morning Star. It's the third book in the Red Rising trilogy, and it's really, really brutal. So I wouldn't recommend it if you can't handle like gore or darker topics. But the author just blows me away with the way that he seems to understand history and politics and warfare and the sort of subtle references that he throws into history, a little bit like Dune, where Dune is a very far future evolution of our own world, where we've conquered the galaxy. And so Red Rising has a very similar story or a very similar concept, but it has a very strong caste system. And so the main character is basically turned from one of the lowest caste characters into the highest caste character as sort of an infiltrator, and his goal is to bring them down. And so a civil war breaks out, and it's really, really fascinating just how much the author seems to understand humanity and both our dark side, but also our potential for more than just hatred and violence.
I love that. Yeah, that's so cool. And I love how you commented about how the books kind of came to you at the right time. Because I truly think that books come at key points. Like there are books that I've picked up at certain points and I'm like, not now. And then I read them later and I'm like, how did I miss this book? And I think that Lord of the Rings in particular is just such a beautiful picture of just life itself. And especially when you're going into like your teen years and things like that, just watching these characters grow from Frodo to, Aragorn to just all this beautiful cast of characters who are literally just, I guess, pictures of what it means to live a life where you're trying to bring good into the world and you're trying to bring healing and restoration into a broken world, which is so much like ours.
Absolutely.
So I would love to hear, and I'll start with you, Jaden, because I feel like you're probably the one that's most excited about this one. I'd love to hear, what are some trends that you've noticed in books being published today, both ones that you like and ones that you dislike? And feel free to disagree with myself and everybody else if you'd like to, like respectfully. But yeah, I'd love to hear your thoughts on some trends that you've seen out there and what your thoughts are on them.
Yeah, so I mean, obviously a lot of books nowadays are similar, but in terms of even just in terms of titles, you can I blame YA for that. I blame YA for that. But you look at like so much of the fantasy genre nowadays, and the titles seem to be some sort of like template, like a blank of blank and blank. And
Shadow, Bone, and Raven.
Shadow of Bone and Raven. You can just like, you go into a book where you see all these books and you're like, what is this, all the same series? No, really? And even with just, like other genres, especially, dystopian nowadays, which, that started with the Divergent series, but but nothing wrong with that. It's just that's one trend that I've noticed, and for one, I feel like it's somewhat overdone in a lot of ways. There's not a lot of variety in terms of titles. But another thing that I've noticed, sort of leaning into our topic today, is the strong female character sort of like stock archetype, whereas even Google defines it as a stock character nowadays. You look up strong female character and it says strong female character is a stock character, usually defined by like hypermasculinity, something like that. And it's just an interesting trend I've noticed nowadays, because really what that is it's sort of like taking all the unlikable tropes we've seen in stereotypical male characters, copying them and pasting them onto female ones and calling that empowerment. Whereas really it's just you're taking stereotypically masculine traits and just throwing them at the opposite gender, instead of making,
a lot of the toxic ones too.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
But really just sort of like throwing them at the opposite gender, and like acting as though, oh, that's what makes a person empowered. That's what makes physical strength, broodiness. That's what makes a person empowered. And it's not just with female characters. They do that with male characters. And, a lot of people don't like those types of characters. But you see it with Captain Marvel in particular. That's one of the biggest examples. She's like the most unlikable character in her own movie, yet almost all the other characters are super likable. But she, the protagonist, is just not, in my opinion, she's not a likable character. Now, there are ways in which I think that can be done well. I think that's done well in Katniss Everdeen. That was one of the original sort of, like broody characters like that. But, it made sense for the story because of her environment. It wasn't just for the sake of being broody or cruel. But that is definitely probably one of the biggest trends I noticed nowadays in especially YA. Like, you always need that broody female character instead of, crafting some sort of, empathetic or like relatable character.
I love the sarcasm.
If I could jump in on that.
Yes, please.
While Jaden was talking, I asked ChatGPT to make me a template for a strong female character, because I think it's really interesting how AI kind of reflects our collective hive mind, if that makes sense. And so this is what it came up with. Age 28, appearance, shoulder length, fiery red hair, emerald green eyes, 5'9" with a lean and muscular build. She often wears practical, durable clothing suited for adventure, favoring earth tones that blend into her surroundings. She is exceptionally fit with the endurance of a marathon runner and the strength of a trained fighter. Has a piercing gaze that can unnerve her opponents and a warm smile for her allies. Place of origin, a remote village in the mountains known for its skilled warriors. Raised by her grandmother, a revered warrior, after losing her parents in a conflict. She has a younger brother who is studying to be a scholar.
Sorry, YA.
I think the
funniest part about that is the younger brother.
A New York bestseller.
The funniest part is the younger brother who studied to be a scholar.
I know.
Yeah.
And the grandmother.
Yeah, even the AI knows that you have to get rid of the parents for agency.
Yeah. By the way, her name is Isabella Izzy Merrick, or the Phoenix.
Yes, why so many phoenixes?
Gotta rise from the ashes.
Oh my word. Okay, you nailed it, Chris. You nailed it. But yeah, it's so true. Like they do expect female characters to be like, they've created like this stereotype by trying to break the stereotype, which in itself has become a stereotype. And it's not realistic. Like, it's not. And I would tell you that most women probably don't feel that way, or maybe they like reading about it in hopes of becoming like, I think not even the person. I don't know that they particularly want to be that person. I think they just want to be admired the way that they are admired in
the story by everybody else for no reason whatsoever. Because like I remember I've talked with you that sometimes some of these girls, like these female characters, they're supposed to be strong and everything, but we're like, why do people even, we don't even understand why the love interest likes her. We're kind of like, you deserve a better girl, please, like leave her.
Yeah.
Please.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like that's a trend too, like a lot of female characters being very like selfish and self-centered because all their
Mhm.
actions are like about how they feel and
They're
why
they're not
they think
strong
it's happening.
people at all. Yeah.
Yeah, they're just like
I mean, they
super.
give in to their debased inclinations more often than not. Like they're not strong people. They're just like fighting. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's as though their strength is, at least it seems as though the authors who write these types of characters, their message is, oh, the way you can make your female character strong is if she's able to beat up 10 guys twice her size without breaking a fingernail. And
Yeah.
and
With like a pipe or something.
yeah, absolutely. And that's not true about that's not true about anyone. I mean, like strength isn't found in like how many guys you can beat up or how many people you can overpower. A lot more strength and a lot more meaningful strength, I believe, is found in the sort of inner story, like the internal conflict or the internal battles, which influences the external battles a lot of the time. But that's where the meaning is found, not in the amount of how many shots you can drink in 30 seconds or how many guys in a bar you can beat up. It's like you said, Shara, it's become like a stereotype,
Right.
because they tried to break the stereotype. And when it was first, a thing, it was pretty interesting. I mean, you had Princess Leia, you had Ellen Ripley, and then eventually Katniss Everdeen, and those were interesting characters that were more broody and sarcastic, snarky, strong, but also had that element of emotional depth that gave them the relatability.
Yeah, I actually think that Katniss, like even in, for example, Katniss, who yes, she can probably best some of the guys in like in her hunting skills and things like that. In the story, you still see a nurturing, more feminine side to her, like when she's nursing PETA or things like that. Just things that are uniquely female, things that shouldn't be divorced from the fact that we have female characters. And we also have guys that are naturally like there shouldn't be a divorcing of like masculine traits from male characters as well, I think. I'd like to hear your thoughts on Katniss, actually, Nev. Yeah, I mean, I agree. I like that, for example, they have a more motherly side to her. For example, how she takes care of Prim and Rue, which I feel like is like more of a feminine thing to do, while most guys they're very protective, but less like motherly, less like adopting somebody as their, and she sort of needs that in every stage of her life. That's so true. I hadn't even realized that with Prim and with Rue. It's like she kind of feels the need to, like, I guess, play mother to them or something like that, which really humanizes her a lot. So even though she's tough, she has this like very sensitive and very tender side to her. But I will admit that in Hunger Games, I did wish that they had slightly stronger, I guess, male characters. Not stronger, but more developed male characters.
Yeah.
But then again, since it was from like Katniss's perspective, I guess maybe there wasn't as much of an opportunity to develop some of the male characters a little bit more. But I do wish that they were more dynamic male characters.
I think one of the things that also makes Katniss interesting is that as much as she has a motherly side, I think in a lot of ways she's also trying to fill in for her father, who died in a mining accident. And so I think that's part of what makes her at least somewhat compelling, because she's very driven by this kind of like this hole in her family's life that she's trying to fill. And rather than just being strong for its own sake, there's like there's very strong stakes involved, which I think really lends the story some of its credence.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's really interesting how, like you pointed out, Chris, she's not being strong for the sake of being strong. She has a reason behind it. And I think that honestly is something that most books do nowadays lack a lot, where we're just expected to accept that they want to be strong because they want to rebel against the empire. Why do you want to rebel
Yeah, they
against
just
the
got
empire?
chips on their shoulders. They
Yeah,
have something
exactly.
to they all a lot of these characters have something to prove but no reason for it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
While we're on the subject of dystopian books, have you ever wondered what a dystopian book would look like with virtuous characters instead of the usual morally gray ones? And not in a goody two shoes way or simplistic way, but with a thrilling story intricately woven with biblical themes? Well, what if I told you there's a book out there that delivers just that? It's called Talon, and here's a glimpse into the book. It's been years since democracy died. America is no more, each state broken up into their own separate countries ruled mostly by cruelty and oppression, and New York City is at the summit. 15-year-old Talon lives alone in a sector known as Drudgeon, just another place in what used to be the Bronx. And he wants to keep it that way. Any family he's had, it's all led to grief, tragedy, torment, and he can't let that happen again. But his reclusive life is shattered when the tyrannical governor of New York sends his most dangerous assassin to kill Talon for unknown reasons. Just when it all seems lost, he learns his attempted assassination might have ties to his lost family, that his parents could have been a part of something dangerous to the government, something bigger than themselves. And plot twist, it's actually written by one of today's guests, Jaden Gelso. Talon is now available on Amazon, and if you love dystopian stories that keep you on the edge of your seat, go ahead and snag your own copy today using the link in the show notes below. Hey there, lovely listeners. I have the most fantastic opportunity to share with you today. How would you like to join the street team for Novelists in November short story collection featuring my very own short story, which you'll be the first to discover the title and story blurb if you join? This enchanting anthology is launching this November, and I'd be absolutely delighted to have you join us. Picture this: dark academia vibes, cozy sweaters, rain pattering on your window, and all your favorite bookish feels with a mug of hot tea or pumpkin latte. That's the essence of this collection. By joining our street team, you'll get exclusive behind-the-scenes info, early access to the cover, sneak peeks of the stories, first dibs on pre-orders, and some very special gifts I'm personally designing just for you. And the best part? There are no requirements. It's super flexible to fit your schedule. We're planning an exciting cover reveal in June and story and title reveal earlier in the month. Plus, you'll get an early ebook copy of the anthology and see our book cover before anyone else. So, if you would love to be part of this cozy autumnal adventure, click the link in the show notes and join the rest of our bookish friends on the street team, or visit bio.site/ShiraJRodriguez. That's bio.site/ShiraJRodriguez. Thank you so much for your incredible support and enthusiasm. I'm truly grateful for you, and I can't wait to see you on the team. Hey there, listeners. Before we dive back into today's episode, I want to take a quick moment to talk about something really important. Reviews are the lifeblood of any podcast. They not only let us know what you're loving about the show, but also help others discover the beauty of living, giving, and repeating. So if you're enjoying the content we're putting out, here's a small favor I'd love to ask. Could you take just a minute or two to leave us a review on your favorite podcast platform? Whether it's Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or any other platform you listen on, your reviews make a world of difference. By leaving a review, you're not just sharing your thoughts with us, but you're also helping us climb the charts and reach more listeners who might benefit from our discussions. Plus, it's a wonderful way to show your support for the content you love. So friends, if you're finding value, inspiration, or even just a good laugh in any of these episodes, please consider dropping a review. It only takes a moment, but it means the world to us. And hey, if you want to go the extra mile, share the podcast with your friends, family, or anyone you think would benefit from these conversations. Together, we can create a community of listeners who are engaged, inspired, and ready to take on the world. All right, that's enough from me. Let's get back to the show. Thanks for being the wonderful, lovely, incredible listeners you are. And as always, enjoy the episode.
Absolutely. I think one of the things with Katniss in particular is how, especially with her relationships between with Gale and Peeta. My interpretation of Gale and Peeta is that they're meant to more embody certain themes, where like Gale is this strong guy who's like really emotionless in a lot of ways, not every way, but in a lot of ways, and sort of goes at problems with like an attack mindset, or like with using force, whereas Peeta is more gentle. He does things calmly. He's a lot more kind, and Katniss is sort of caught in between the two of them in terms of like, oh, it's not really just like, oh, who do I choose, who do I like more? It's more like, oh, what path do I choose? Do I go down the strong, like sort of attack, forceful road, or do I just sort of relax, be gentle? And she sort of represents a balance between the two of them. My only criticism of that would be how Gale and Peeta don't really have much more variety except those specific traits, which, I mean, like Chris has said, like sort of embodies like the sort of criticism that a lot of people have, where it's like, oh, characters just embodying themes and not really, having much variety. So that's my one criticism of them, which is funny because a lot of people, there have been a couple of my friends, they've asked me like, oh, Team Peeta, Team Gale. I'm like, team neither. They're just don't choose. They're neither of them are that great, but they do sort of embody the themes of like physical strength or more nurturing gentleness, and she sort of has to choose between the two. That's an interesting sort of theme to explore, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. And yes, Chris, you're going to have to share like a post or something like that, because that was brilliant, that exposition that you had. Because on our pre-call, Chris gave us a bit of an exposition on how the Hunger Games works and how the whole love triangle is basically a kind of like a picture, an illustration, or a symbol of Katniss's struggle and conflict between how to react and how to respond to things in her life, whether she's going to respond in bitterness or in a harder attitude, I guess. And Peeta, which is the gentler side, the more nurturing side, the more gentle side, as Jaden was saying. And yeah, I just found it so interesting because I'd never thought of it like that. And I was actually asking what you guys thought of love triangles in particular, because I think that that's like a whole
That's
like
a whole other
thread.
rant. Like we could have an entire podcast episode on that.
I will. I promise. Oh, but yeah, I love that.
Okay, I don't know about you, but I had so much fun editing that episode and listening to everything again. There were so many times that I literally burst out laughing. It was so funny, and I can't tell you how many times I was editing through this and listening to all the times that we were talking over each other. It's hilarious. We totally forgot to be professional, which is amazing. We totally forgot to just wait like 3 seconds or something. It was amazing. I enjoyed this so much, and I can't wait for you to listen to the next episode. Definitely join us, because we are going to be talking all about how to create a strong male character from the perspective of male writers. So I am so excited to dive into that. Join us next week, because I will be publishing that episode next week. And until next time, continue to live, give, and repeat. And I'll see you next week. Yay! You did it! I'm giving you a lovely big virtual hug because you just finished another episode of Her Reading Life podcast. If you'd like to access all the wonderful links I mentioned in this episode, visit my website at bio.site/Shira J. Rodriguez. That's bio.site/Shira J. Rodriguez. There you can access my blog posts, resources, and so much more. Also, check out my Instagram page for more inspirational content, and join my email list for insider secrets and exclusive updates on special events. The links are in the description box below. Also, if you could take a minute and leave a review for this podcast, that would be amazing. We're able to reach so many more people because of your reviews and ratings. I can't wait to chat with you next time, friends. Keep living, giving, and repeating.